What is going on? I want to welcome you from at court for today, September 21st. I'm your host, Sean Murphy, alongside my guy, Jeff. Hi, Freddie. Jeff, good to see you, my friend, as always. Dude, we got the matching background now, too. I like that
We're
I love
twinning.
that we're getting the vibe, man. It looks great.
We're twinning. No, I listen. I had the Jaden Ivy and Adam Silver beforehand, but after all this Sarver stuff, all right, I'm not putting Silver behind me for the time being. All right, we're
I
sticking.
actually respect
Amen to
that.
that. Amen to that. Yeah.
We're sticking with Cade and Saddiq.
And this looks like we're in this looks like we're in the same studio. You know what I mean? Like it looks like, dude,
Right
it
there.
looks like, oh man, I could reach over and just kiss you on the cheek.
All right,
Oh,
pause. I'm out of here.
like as a brother, you know what I'm saying? Come on now. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But also joined today, not by our usual guy, Troy Sergey, as he actually flew today to Hawaii for his honeymoon. We are
Bougie
joined
Troy.
by Steve of the Detroit Bad Boys, also a regular on Woodward Pistons Table Talks. Steve, it's good to have you here. And dude, thank you so much for bringing Joe with you. Joe and his two phones, man. It's one of my favorite traditions of every table talk.
Yeah, he said he wants to chime in today, but I don't know. He's on the phone with LeBron. He's trying to call him from the future to let him know what his Cleveland Cavalier team is going to look like,
Mm-hmm.
to try and convince him to go to Detroit. But I don't know if it's going to work.
I think he was also seeing if Detroit wanted to waive and stretch Josh Smith for just a little longer and see if like they want to just add that contract even longer to their bucks. But yeah, that's what the second phone's for is so like seeing if he can go to the bank, get more money so we can get Josh Smith paid. But
Jesus Christ.
that's okay. But Steve, one thing about you, I mean, obviously, you write for Detroit Bad Boys, do good work over there, and you come and bring a lot of analysis with us each and every week, every Thursday night. But one thing about you specifically, in that something that you and I always talk about, you're like, hey man, if you ever want to talk the draft, I love talking the draft. And there's a lot of guys that say that. But Steve, can you break down just exactly how much film you've watched and how many different prospects that you currently have done homework on? Because it's insane.
Yeah, 58 guys is the list right now. I have 20 for the just like the lottery preview. There's 20 guys that could be in lottery range. My top 10, really my top like 12 are probably going to be locked into the lottery no matter what. There's the final like 2 or 4 that'll probably be wrong. I believe my returning NCAA list is like 13. I want to say I can give you exact numbers here. And then my sleepers is 13 guys of guys I've looked at. So 22 NCAA basketball returning guys, 20 looking at just the guys that'll be in lottery range, all freshmen, all like 18-year-old dudes, with the exception of the Thompson twins. And then 13 sleeper guys that I really like dug deep into. And I've at least watched like 5 or so film on each guy. And the returning guys, I try to watch all the film because most of them I've already watched like all the film on, like Arthur Kaluma. I'm sure anybody that's a draft head has watched all that film from last year. So that's what I do in my spare time. I'm always at a computer anyway. In my day job, I teach here at the University of Arizona in Tucson. That's where me and Joe are currently. So I'm always at a computer writing, grading, doing something like that.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So like how like if you had to like put like an estimate, like how many hours a week would you say do you spend like watching film on prospects, doing draft analysis, looking at like future players? Like how many hours a week would you say you dedicate to that?
See, how many hours would be in a week then? 24 times 7 is what?
Oh, it's like 104. Listen, man, my head. I just drove
It's over 100.
for Troy's wedding. I did 17 hours of driving in like a matter of 3 days. My brain is currently barnacles right now.
We'll just classify it as a lot. How about that?
Yeah.
So 168. So I just ran the numbers. 168. I'd say about a third on like busy weeks, so about 56 hours, and then on like weeks where I don't have to grade or do much other things, I'd say about half of that. I mean, I just love watching basketball. So what can I say? And I like the draft process, the ability to like try and see who's going to be good, try and look in the past too to get an idea of like, oh, this guy was passed over for this reason. The decline of the center, like who are the guys that might buck that trend? Why would you take a center?
Right.
all that stuff.
Yeah. So Jeff, when I said this guy watches draft stuff, like, and we wanted to talk I didn't just bring on just anybody, dude.
No, and trust, I want to ask you, Steve, too. Like you just said, what the amount of hours you watch film is what some people work in a week at a job, and you have a job, so you're working and you're watching film. I want to ask you, like, just a personal question. Like, when did this start? When did your obsession with the game, with watching film? Because it's like it's fun. We all talk about it, and this is our livelihood. But for you, like, when did it start for you?
Well, growing up, like I was a big fan of those Hornets. I was a big fan of the Bad Boys. Obviously, I love like watching Lamb and Barkley go at it and fight all the time, and Horn throwing elbows and stuff.
Yeah.
But I really fell more in love with basketball with Grandma Mom, Muggsy Bogues, Alonzo Mourning, Del Curry, that 90s Hornets team. And I mean, I think if they'd have stayed in Charlotte and that team would have stayed together, I probably would have stuck with that team, but they broke up. And LJ, Grandma Larry Johnson, he's kind of ahead of his time in that like undersized power forward who could do everything, pass, shoot, all that stuff. I love those shoes he wore, those Converse too. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the the old lady in the shoe ads. Yeah, those were awesome. And then for college, I mean, growing up, I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, so college basketball was the ticket in town. When I grew up, when I was a kid, Kenny Thomas, Charles Smith, those were the teams. Kenny Thomas, longtime vet, he was on the Kings. He was on AI, Sixers and stuff. He was like the man, you know, at that time. And those teams were really good. And then when I went into college, Batman himself, Danny Granger, was there. Got to see him a couple times grow up. I always say if he had just stayed healthy one extra year, LeBron's history probably is rewritten different, because those Pacer teams would have looked completely different. I mean, they took him to the brink without Granger, and Granger was like pre-KD. Yeah, absolutely. But I think I really got into like breaking down film more when I moved to Michigan. So I went to Michigan for grad school. I was there from 2012 until just last year, 2021. Started going to Pistons game, fall in love more with the city of Detroit. Very similar to Albuquerque in a lot of ways, of just like a bad reputation, but not one that's not warranted. I mean, it has bad spots just like anywhere else, but it's so full of culture and flavor, and just all the people I've met and everywhere I went was always so welcoming to me, from like Mexican town to Greek town. But the team sucks so bad. You know, it was so bad. I still have my Greg Monroe Motor City jersey in the closet here. Moose. Moose was like in his second year, I think 2012 when I started, maybe third year when I started watching. And so I started just trying to see like, who are the next guys coming up in the draft, and then just got more and more into the film about who's going to be good. And then started looking at more things like, why did Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George get passed over? And like wings kind of run the league now, and just started reading up from a bunch of different other people, like Sam Vecini from The Athletic, Rafael Barlow, who's NBA Big Board now. Back then it was NFL or NBA Draft Junkies, excuse me. Keandre on Hoop Intellect. Like I just started binging like as much other draft experts and learning from them as I could, you know.
What can I ask you too, just now living in Arizona, what's the perspective as a Pistons fan outside of Michigan? Because like I obviously we surround ourselves, everybody we know is pretty much a Pistons fan, but what's the perspective, what's the narrative out in Arizona about the Detroit Pistons that you have to correct at times, where you're like, hold on guys, like I'm a fan of the team? Because I feel like a lot of people outside of Detroit, like when you hear that, like for example, Stephen A. Smith, I know he's the obvious example, but when he first hears Detroit, he's like, well, y'all ain't winning. Like you don't actually know what's going on in Detroit. What's the narrative, man, in Arizona? What's going on?
So I teach at the
basketball team themselves. They do.
I teach at the University of Arizona. All the students, the faculty, when they see Piston stuff, they all say the same thing. Cade's coming up. Cade's awesome. You guys got one of the best coming up. That's honestly the narrative out here. Like nobody really talks trash about him. And I think it's because Devin Booker's from Michigan too. Like, so he's talked a lot about being from Michigan, being from Detroit and all that. So they got respect for it. And people here know basketball. Between here with Coach Lloyd now, it used to be Coach Miller, even the women's team, Coach Barnes, awesome coach, amazing coach. I love her. And then up in Phoenix with Monty Williams and that staff. And then even at ASU, even though boo ASU, but Bobby Hurley's a good coach too. I mean, so people here know basketball. They're not just going to diss on random people. It's not like being in Philly, you know, where it's Philly or die.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Steve, I do want to correct you real quick. How dare you not know your Michigan geography. No, I'm just kidding. But Devin Booker is actually not from Detroit.
Oh,
He's
Grand
from
Rapids. Excuse me.
Yeah, he's from Grand Rapids, which is actually my hometown. My boy D Book actually had to get the physical. Dude had to get the physical copy this year because my guy is on the cover. And I'm actually glad he was on this year because, like, dude, I've already put so many hours. Jeff, I'm already at 60 hours in this year's 2K.
I'm with you, and for a reason you just mentioned, Devin Booker's my favorite player. Like, not a lot of people know that. Like, I cover the Pistons, but Devin Booker has been my favorite. Like, I have his jersey hanging up in my room right now. I love Devin, so that makes it even more ironic too that you're from Arizona. But had to get the 2K, man. He's on the cover.
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah, he's one of those guys too that, like, if you don't like him, like, I question why do you watch basketball?
Yeah,
like, he's just smooth and got everything, man.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Steve, I do want to, talk about that obsession and kind of dive a little bit more and pick your brain into the guys that you're really enjoying to see. And coming up pretty soon, I want to know some guys that you would love to see in a Pistons uniform. And we'll talk about that in a minute because this is From Half Court. Each and every week, we talk all things NBA basketball. If you like that, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and be sure that you're hitting that notification bell so that you know when all that great content is coming your way. Now, obviously, like I said earlier, we are normally joined by our guy, Troy Sergey. I mentioned earlier that he is going to Hawaii, and I just wanted to quick give him a shout out here on the podcast specifically. Congratulations to my guy because he did get married this weekend. I was in the wedding, and we had a really great time. So it was a real pleasure to have that time out with him. Super proud of him, and we'll be looking forward to having him back next week. But just yeah, man, just really proud of him, love him a ton, and we miss him. However, having Steve with us is a great honor and a great pleasure. So be sure you're following Steve on Twitter at Burke Worldwide. I didn't even realize I wasn't following him, and I was like, dude, what in the world is wrong with me?
If I can correct you though, it's Burke Worldwide. I'm from Albuquerque. It's a play on.
I am the worst. I am the worst.
If you watch Step Brothers, you probably get the reference.
Yep. Okay. Yep. There you go. Yep. Burke Worldwide. All right. There we go. I will get it right, my friend. I promise. Be sure you.
It's all good. It's one of those things. If you're not from there, you don't know. It's like if you're not from Detroit and somebody says American Lafayette, you don't know.
Exactly. But whatever it is, dang it, follow my guy on Twitter. But also be sure you're following my guy Jeff as well at Jeff IFRady and tuning in Monday through Friday on the Morning Woodward Show. You and Adam are killing it, by the way, man. You guys pretty much called this game this past week to a T. So was proud of you guys in that.
Hey, we were on one this morning, man. A lot of hookah being blown in that studio.
Yeah, man. That guy's gonna get like a freaking nicotine coma at some point.
Adam was straight up sitting on the couch after the show for about an hour and a half, just sitting there like this. He's like, dude, I don't feel good.
Dude, I was like, it happened the last time I was in town after the NBA draft. He was like, ah.
Dude, I'm like, well, you were puffing on that hookah for 2 hours. Like,
he was like, I smoked too much hookah. I'm like, yeah, you did, you dumbass.
Dude, it was in a red Solo cup. I'm like, I don't know. I don't trust where that came from, but Adam we were on one this morning. I mean,
I actually know how hookah works. I know the whole process. Didn't he put it in like an orange?
Dude, no, this time it was like a to-go cup. Like it might have been an orange still, but it was like a red Solo cup with tinfoil on it. I don't know how the mechanics work, but he walked in with a tinfoil on top of a red Solo cup. I'm like, what the hell is that? He's like, it's a to-go cup for hookah. I'm like, you can get to-go cups with hookah? I did not even know that was a thing. I mean, I don't go to hookah bars, but you had it in a red Solo cup.
That's you woke up late. You're just looking for something quick. That's what that is right there. But hey, we love Adam nonetheless. But but Steve, we were actually talking about this for the pod, and it's funny that you were coming on this week of all weeks because in the day of all days, because just this afternoon, Shams broke the news that it looks like for the upcoming collective bargaining agreement, it looks like new items and things that will be in that agreement include draft age eligibility going from 19 to 18, which would be the return of high school to the NBA, and a measure that would allow players citing mental health similar to physical injury, which was actually cited to be something that was very much championed by guys and that were at the forefront were guys like DeMar DeRozan and Kevin Love when they were talking out about mental health a few years back. So just wanted to give a shout out to those guys on that as well. I think I think the mental health thing especially is just a huge win, just for the players and for the well-being. And I just, the NBA is always at the forefront of things like that. So for a league that's had a lot of losses over the last week, as far as how they've handled certain things, that's a pretty good thing for them to do. But I do want to talk more so about the high school eligibility aspect, because I'm not going to lie, for years, I kind of was of the opposite thought, that I thought it should go in the other direction. I was of the opinion that if guys could get an NIL deal or start getting some form of payment to be in college, that the benefit of being being in a university or being in a setting where they can grow their game, become more mature, like not have that pressure be on them day one, would be something of benefit. But I think I've just come to the point that if a guy's going to get drafted out of high school, number one, he's going to more than likely get drafted number one 2 years, 2 years in the future anyway. And with all these options and all these alternatives of the G League, of going and playing overseas, at that point, why rush it? Like why delay it? Why not have these guys come in? And if there are certain players that are truly ready and are truly able to make that jump, I mean, we've seen so many players make the jump and be great. So I think I'm of the opinion now, personally, where, it's just time. It was inevitable. But Steve, what are your thoughts, and how do you think this is going to affect, the way that players make these decisions? And do you think we're going to see a lot of players make the jump out of high school?
I think initially they're going to try. I don't know if they can still maintain eligibility the way like college guys do, where they're like, I'm testing the waters.
Right.
I'm still retaining my eligibility. If that's the case, then I think like just about everybody in that top, I don't know, 10, 15 is going to test the waters, because why not, right? But I'm glad that it happened too. I used to be of the mindset too of like, no, they need to have 3 years. They need to get ready. But it's like they're in a profession where they're on a ticking time clock, right? Every time they step out on the court, they're wearing their knees out, they're wearing their body out. So that's why like coming out of high school is useful for them. If this is their intended line of work, then they should get into it sooner rather than later, because again, you never know what's going to happen. You only have a limited amount of time in your body. If Father Time is undefeated, that's always good. And again, like boosters, we all know they can be toxic. Yep. And that system is not that it's going away, but I think, removing that college experience where they get in their ear, they coaches' ears and stuff. Not that that can't happen in the NBA, but it's one less step in that direction too, to where they can get with the team, the trainers, the staff, and we have teams at the lower half of the NBA now, like the Spurs, like the Pistons, even the Magic, that are committed to developing guys long-term, making sure they take care of their bodies, making sure they take care of themselves, and not about like trying to pump up the university. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. And Jeff, I don't know about you, but I think one moment that I look back in particular as like a moment that kind of shifted my my mindset on this was, I remember in particular when it was North Carolina versus Duke, and it was Zion Williamson, in Cameron Fieldhouse. Yep. And he just within 8 seconds blew out his shoe. And it was one of those moments that, luckily it wasn't anything major, but that could have changed the entire trajectory of his family's fortune. Yep. And his overall, legacy. And I think for me at that moment, personally, I don't know about you, but at that moment, I was like, just get this guy to the league. He doesn't need to be in college. He's too good.
Yeah, I mean, some guys are just built like that. Like Zion could have been in the league out of high school. Like, there's no question about it. I think with the NIL now, it's definitely even, pushed me further in that direction, because kids now, if you feel like you need more time to develop, you can go to college and make money and develop. So it's a win-win either way. If you could play, you could play. And I think with the NBA nowadays, it's a lot less physical. So players now, even entering the age of 18, you're going in, you're going to have a lot more pressure, but guys are going to be able to adjust, like as opposed to back then coming in at 18 in a much more physical league. So I love this, man. I mean, there's been rumors, with LeBron and Brownie, now that Brownie's approaching that age. So I think it was the right decision for the NBA. And I think it just makes the most sense, because it's not football. You don't need to go to college for 3 years to get your man body. Like, if you could play, you could play, especially in the NBA. And like you said, Steve, your body. Like you don't want to have to go to college. Now it's different because you make money, but even with Zion, like he wasn't getting paid. Who knows? I mean, at least under the table, who knows? But going to Duke, if you have a significant injury, like that will hurt the trajectory. Maybe he doesn't go number one. So I like it for the NBA. It's good for these kids. And like I said, if you're built physically, especially how kids nowadays, man, like they're built different. Like a lot of these kids coming up, you're like, dude, this guy can play in the NBA right now. I think RJ Barrett, I can even argue, was another one of those guys. We're coming out, I'm like, this dude is just built to be in the league right now. So I love it. I got no problem with it.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Jeff, you just brought up a name of one of the hottest names perhaps in recruiting in the past 20 years, Brownie James. He's a guy he's a kid that specifically people, have anointed already as, what will he be like in the league with his father? Like people are talking about where LeBron would possibly try to go in order to play with his son. And I think for a while, a lot of people were avoiding having that conversation and that evaluation because I think, quite frankly, a lot of people learned from how LeBron was treated in high school, and I think how a lot of those prospects were treated. And I think making any judgments on their ability and who they are as people at a younger age, you just generally don't want to do, right? But I think he's such a prominent name, and I think he's so, he's of the age now where he's being talked about as being recruited and getting scholarships. People are looking at him in the realm of would NBA teams make moves in order to go get Brownie James if that secures them LeBron James someday. At that point, we got to talk about it, right? I'm curious if you've seen any of Brownie James's film or anything that he's had out there. If you have or haven't, like what your thought process has been on that. Personally, for what I've seen and from a lot of the reading I've done, from the film I've seen, it looks like Brownie James would be a low first round, high to mid second round player if he were to go out straight out of high school. And even then that might be a stretch. Right now a lot of places have him ranked around as like a 40 or 50th best prospect in the class. What are your thoughts, Steve?
I like him. The way I can describe it is he plays like a coach's son. Super good shooter, number one. He has good footwork. He has really good form on his jumper. Like he is going to get him up. He's also really focused on defense. Pretty good point guard. I think really the only thing, honestly, that's going to hurt him is his size. He's like 6'2", 190, something like that.
Yep.
Like that's really going to be the only thing that holds him back. And he's not as dynamic as his dad of an athlete. But again, like you watch him and there's nothing you can pick apart in his game really to be like, he doesn't give effort. Because you would think too, being LeBron James's kid, he's going to mail it in all the time. But no, man, he's locked in on defense. Again, he's paying attention to the minutia in shooting, footwork, in trying to fit passes in places and being a good teammate. I would put him in I'd put him in lottery consideration, to be quite honest, just because I don't really know anybody below that right now in that class who I could say definitively, like, yeah, he's going to step in, he's going to know his role, and he's going to get better at it. If Bronny continues to, put his handle on, improve that handle, improve the court vision, become a more well-rounded point guard. I mean, he can be a solid player. I'm not sure that he's going to be like a game changer, but right. He reminds me a little bit of LeBron's all running mate, Mario Chalmers, in those Heat teams, where his main job was space out the floor for the guys, play defense, good point of attack defense on the opposition's point guard, help us do all these little things that make us win a title. Like he can be that at the least, I think. Right. I really like him.
Bryce got the height advantage there, the height gene rather, in that thing. Bryce is
he did.
He's 4 inches tall,
6'7", something.
He has the athleticism too. I mean, he's a young kid, but I mean, like from the film that's starting to come out on him, again, like, he's still that age. I mean, he's 15, so we're not going to talk about, really talk much about him, but like the film you see of him, the kid's definitely an athlete. That's for sure. That's definitely something that jumps out.
Yeah, for sure. And again, Bronny's fine. He, as an athlete, it's just he's going to be compared to his dad. He's going to be compared to his brother. That's just going to be the thing. But the way he's handled it too, like you don't really see him like shoving for the spotlight. He played on Sierra Canyon with Amari Bailey, who's like a lot of people ranked him top 15 in this coming draft class, again at UCLA. And really, in the film I watched, I like Bronny a lot better than Amari Bailey. So,
yeah. That's fair. Currently in the ESPN 100, which again is just a database that's objective. You know what I mean? Or I mean, no, I mean not it's subjective. You know, a lot of it's based off of opinion and internet. You know, uh, word fart there. But currently they have Brownie James as 35th in the class, and they currently have him as a 4-star recruit. Currently he has offers from a lot of great schools. I mean, USC, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Memphis, and Kentucky have all made offers to Bronny. But also with this current change, in theory, if he wanted to declare for the draft, he could. Personally, I think he's the type of prospect where I think a year or two of college could probably do him pretty good. You know, I mean, maybe at least a year. I mean, maybe that's just me personally. You know, maybe a year at Ohio State would be a benefit to him. But at the same time, you know, if he does have that vision, if he does, and if he could play with his dad, I mean, might not be a better crash course than playing with his own father. What do you think about that?
I mean,
and Steve, I apologize.
You go, Steve.
I'm just gonna say go blue. I'm a Michigan alum, so I'm gonna plug for that. And I think, honestly think if his like goal is let's spend a year to hone our skills, like Juwan's the guy, man. He's his dad's buddy.
Yeah,
they play together with the Heat. He'll play with Jet Howard up here as well. Like Juwan knows how to get him right in that regard. No offense to Ohio State and their coaching staff, but there's a difference between somebody who's been in the NBA, both as a player, as a development coach, who has the respect of people like, you know, LeBron and, you know, players in the league. That'll just set him up better, I think.
Yeah.
And I would love to see him there.
I love Juwan, and just saying, a lot of Michigan guys are going into the league and are playing really, really damn good basketball. Just saying.
And also with Bronny too, like whatever school gets him, cha-ching. Because that's must see. Rather if he plays well or he doesn't. So on top of that, I honestly love the Juwan Howard fit. I really do, because you have a guy who's going to understand the expectations he's coming in with, and he has that relationship like you talked about with LeBron. He's going to be able to relate to him, and for a guy to be able to, you know, cradle him, understand the pressure he's going through. I love the fit at Michigan, and don't forget, people at Michigan clamoring to go to those games. No doubt about it.
Yeah. And like the way that Bronny plays, he's a better version of Eli Brooks, who just graduated, you know, get up a bunch of threes, play some point, play some shooting guard. Like perfect fit in my opinion.
Yeah, most certainly. Now, Steve, there's like I said, there's probably 2 prospects in the recruiting world that are garnering a ton of attention. Brownie James is the big one as far as the height and what comes with the name. But I would say the most viral prospect right now, and essentially a lock to go number 1 in the upcoming draft, is Victor Wembanyama.
He knows. Look at him.
I pretty much told you, you know, I'm gonna ask you about Victor Wembanyama. And you know my thoughts already, Steve. You know, like a lot of the people in the French national camp have talked about, it's not a question of if this guy can play basketball. The question is, can he stay on the court? And you know, for me personally, I see why teams like Utah and San Antonio are making the decision now of, all right, yeah, it might be good. It might be good to tank, because this is a guy that if he comes into your franchise, I mean, that just changes your trajectory instantly. Steve, what about Victor Wembanyama makes him such a different prospect than what we've seen? What do you think of the comparisons to like guys like Evan Mobley and Chet Holmgren? And what do you think his overall like ceiling can be? And what do you think about his trajectory as a player?
Well, I mean, number one, he's been reported to be 7'4", but if you follow Rafael Barlow, who's like the guy in terms of international scouting stuff, he just corrected Ant Wright, who was talking about Wembanyama, and he's like, you know, actually, I've heard he's been reported to be 7'5" without shoes. So number one, there is that. That's like Yao Ming territory, right? 240 is what he's listed at now. It's hard to tell though, because when you see him, he looks skinny, right? But I mean, 7'5".
Holy,
really hard to tell.
With a jump shot.
Yeah, and then that's the thing. The next thing, it's not just a jump shot; it's the ability to create for himself. This is where I think he separates himself from Chet. Chet, like when I did the breakdown of Chet for DBB last year, I kind of came away from it thinking he's like a Horace Grant type who like always does the little things, is a defensive monster that can supplement a guy like Shaq, who Horace Grant did that for in 2 different spots. And the reason why is because Shaq didn't want to play defense, right? So Horace Grant like did everything on that end. He spaced the floor out. In his era was like, that 16, 20-foot jump shot. But Chet was more like that too. He didn't do a lot of creation at Gonzaga, but he's a really, really, really good defender, like can be your whole defense pretty much. Wanyama is that, but he is also somebody that has a handle that can create rebound at a high level. On September 17th, I believe it's still his most recent game, he against Hapoel Holon, he was 10 of 18 from the field. He got to the line 13 times. He made all 13 of those free throws. He scored 34 points. Had 4 blocks, 5 rebounds. I mean, that's the kind of player you're looking at. In terms of ceiling, again, go follow Rafael Barlow, if not, because he said when he's talked to his trainer's like, I don't think he can just be the best like prospect in this draft. I think he can be one of the best players ever, like Hakeem Olajuwon territory. I mean, obviously his trainer is going to pump him up, but you see all these numbers, you see everything, the way he moves. He can be a perimeter defender. He can defend the rim. He's obviously got some strength stuff to work out because he's still kind of skinny, but like you just don't see this mix of size and skill abilities in anybody really.
So he's the true sense of a unicorn.
Yeah, I don't like that term, honestly, to be honest, because I think it's been overused a lot. But yeah,
it's overused, but it's definitely overused. I agree with that. But if you were to say what the definition of what the unicorn term is supposed to be, he's the definition. Would he not be?
No, because I think unicorn started with like Porzingis and the idea that this guy blocks shots and shoots threes. He can protect the rim and he can space the floor. I think Wembanyama is a different animal, a different mythical beast, maybe a griffin or something like. Like Porzingis was the unicorn. Wembanyama's like a griffin or a phoenix or something like that. He's still rare, but he's even rarer.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's all right. That's high praise because I thought of unicorn as like, I thought it was a disservice to not call him a unicorn, but to your point, it might just be a disservice to call him a unicorn because he might just be that damn good.
And like we talked about on the Pistons roundtable, the Woodward Pistons roundtable, there's a reason San Antonio, after all these years of like, we're not going to tank, we want to compete. All of a sudden they're like, no, here you go, Atlanta. Here's DeJounte Murray. Let's just not sign anybody and just not have a point guard. We'll figure it out. Like, there's a reason. Yeah,
100%. I mean, it's like when the Spurs, I mean, they haven't really had that type of guy in the drafts. Obviously they got Kawhi through a trade in the middle of the lottery, but I mean, they haven't struck gold like that since Tim Duncan. And that would be a hell of a type of prospect to strike gold on. That's for sure.
If he doesn't go to the Pistons, I would love for him to end up in San Antonio. So.
And I feel like players like Victor, like now, especially in today's NBA, like it's so positionless. Like the term unicorn, like just because he's able to do multiple things, like that's going to become much more common. I get there's still guys that are stagnant, but for the most part, like you're seeing more of these guys coming out like a Chet or guys that are like 6'8", 6'7", like Cade Cunningham, which their game is just so complete. Like nowadays, the NBA, you just need forwards. You need guys that can do a lot of different things. So he's special, man. That's for sure.
Yeah, most certainly. And, listen, he's not going to be in Detroit. I just don't see a world where if this season goes the way that we want it to, where we're going to be the number 1 pick. I mean, even if this team is in the lottery, I don't see us as being a team that would be above like the 7th or 8th pick. I just think we have too much talent to be in that conversation. At least I would hope, but you never know. I mean, you even saw New Orleans with the way that the NBA is approached as approached the lottery. I mean, as you've seen, just because you get, even with the Pistons this past season, just because you get top 3 odds doesn't mean you're a lock for that top 3. So, I mean, it really isn't, even saying like Detroit, that's probably where they'll be around. I mean, you never know. You could get lucky, but
Sean, we were doing those lottery spins. You'd hit them before this draft, and guess who would get number 1? All these teams from 7 to 8. Like I had New Orleans get the number 1 pick at one of my spins. I'm like, yeah, this could happen. So you're right. Nothing's for sure, but I'm with you. But we'll see. You never.
But Steve, if we did get Victor Wembanyama, I mean, that would be generational type talent, dynasty lock type stuff, would it not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you brought it up too. The big thing is health. I mean, he's had some dings here and there. You can look up his injury report. He hasn't been the healthiest all the time. Like in Asvel, they played a bunch in Euro League, I believe, and in their domestic league. So part of him moving to Metropolitans 92 was this idea that let's get him a little bit more rest so that he's not playing like so often. That's a little worrisome, obviously, but if he sticks and stands up and stays together, yeah, it's not a matter of how good Detroit can be. It's a matter of how many titles will they be holding.
Yeah, 100%. And it's actually going to be pretty exciting because Victor Wembanyama is actually going to be coming to the United States and will be playing the G League Ignite in a G League Ignite showcase in Vegas. So there will be a pair of preseason games, and Victor Wembanyama will be the headlining prospect. And there are reports that like there might even be some open practices as well to the media and to scouts. I have a feeling those might be like some of the most booked, crazy to get into practices that will ever exist. So that gym is going to be unreal. I for one will be definitely tuning in on ESPN Plus if that's available, because man, that guy is a special prospect. This episode of From Half Court is brought to you by Manscaped. When we talk about post players, there is few better players in the restricted area than our friends over at Manscaped. With great products such as the Lawnmower 4.0 with skin-safe technology, the Weed Whacker, their deodorants, lotions, and more, Manscaped is unrivaled when it comes to the men's hygiene game, serving over 8 million balls worldwide. That's a lot of testicles, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're finding yourself in need of Manscaped products, be sure to go to manscaped.com and use code HALFCOURT at checkout, because that can get you 20% off plus free shipping. Our friends at Manscaped sent us these products, and I can tell you that they are absolutely for real. I have been absolutely satisfied and in love with their entire product line, from boxers, t-shirts, the Lawnmower 4.0 to the Weed Whacker ear and nose trimmer. You can really not go wrong. Be sure to go to manscaped.com and use code HALFCOURT at checkout for 20% off plus free shipping. Thank you again to our friends at Manscaped for sponsoring this video. But Steve, enough about all these big, sexy names, because I get it. These are the guys that go viral. This is the guys you see on TikTok, right? I mean, Brownie, that's definitely who you see on TikTok. Victor Wembanyama, this is the guy you see on Twitter. I want to talk about, let's say things go the way I expect, right? Let's say the Pistons are in like that 7 to 10 pick range in the lottery next year. Like we have a good season, maybe not quite get into the playoffs, but still have an opportunity to go get some talent in this year's draft. When you're looking at, the landscape of the prospects that are coming out, and you're looking at the big board that you're making for this upcoming draft, what specific names are you looking at? Because I mean, obviously, every single person in the world would want Victor Wembanyama to be on their team, right? Every single one of us. Like, who's going to be number one on your big board? It's not going to take a genius to put Victor Wembanyama first, right? But I want to talk realistic prospects. What are some guys that you look at a year from now and like looking at like the construction of our team and go, that guy would be nice in a Pistons uniform?
I mean, Jairus Walker comes to 9 first. Jairus Walker, forward. He's going to be at the University of Houston. They list him at 6'8", 235 pounds. He came out of IMG Academy. What I wrote about him was wing athleticism with the skills of a power forward and the strength and length of a center. He might end up being somebody who's drafted higher because he is so impactful, but he's also like a Jaren Jackson type too, to where Jaren Jackson, I believe, went 3rd or 4th, but that was in kind of a down year. And again, he's one of those guys that was like the safe pick in that draft. And those guys always, like I said, it depends on the field. Sometimes the safe pick is a put down. Sometimes it's a positive thing. But Jairus Walker's number one. Like defensively, he's ready. I think he's ready to do whatever. He can switch. He can defend centers. He and Beef Stew together would be like a monstrous nightmare on defense. And then sprinkle in Jaylen Brown in there too. And maybe Jairus can play the 3 at sometimes too, which would be awesome. He averaged 4 assists in his final season at IMG2. So he really knows how to pass it. A lot of those are out of the block, but still you just don't see that combination. 16 points. So he's not like the go-to scorer. He's shot 40% from three, but he took like a really small sample size. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but it's like under 23s, I think, but still 40%. And the mid-range jumper is most of what everybody, and the free throw percentage is what everybody looks at when they're saying he's going to be a good shooter.
And this guy looks like
mid-range jumper that is consistent. And then he shot over 80% in his last 2 seasons in high school. So everything here checks out. Big dude that can screen. Like I said, wing athleticism, power forward skills, strength of a center. He's one of those guys that the modern NBA wants. And he would be perfect in between Saddiq, Beef Stew, Cade, Ivy. Like he fills in that defensive gap, athleticism gap in the forward spot. Again, I don't know where, like, if Beef Stew would come off the bench, what's going to come up with Duran, but he would be definitely up there of guys like I want in a Pistons uniform, please.
Oh yeah, he just looks like one of those guys when you look at the positionless basketball world that we're in. I mean, just looking at the body that he has, the frame that he has, it looks like he has the frame of like a guy like a Jay Crowder, and then like the athleticism and jump of a. No, I'm not saying he has like Hamidou Diallo type athleticism, but what I'm saying is he looks like a hell of an athlete too. So I mean, that's when you're talking about that type of combination, that's deadly. But what are some other names that come to mind, Steve? Like, what are some guys that you think maybe not even like guys you would want to see in the Pistons, but like what are some guys that are going to be in this upcoming lottery that you think might be overlooked or underappreciated or underevaluated?
Anthony Black is my number 7 guy. If we're talking that the Pistons get number 7, LaMelo comps will come out, but this is a guy that also can be a point of attack defender at the point guard position. He is 6'7", 195 pounds. I mean, he really knows how to pass the ball. If you watch the FIBA U18 tape, and then Arkansas did a European tour as well, like, man, he just can make those passes like nothing. I mean, again, 6'7", 195 point guard. The scoring is the concern. Like, he doesn't always look for his own shot a lot. He's still developing as a jump shooter. But I think he's going to fall somewhere in between LaMelo and Lonzo, to be honest. When I watch his game, he definitely makes passes and has that handle, and it is that tall point guard that we see with LaMelo, has that sauce, has that flavor on his passes, and sees things that other guys don't. But he's not the aggressive scorer that LaMelo is. He's more like Alonzo, where he's happy to get his teammates involved. He can play tough defense and make a difference there. I just don't think he's going to be as regarded as like a really top-notch scorer, but he is going to be regarded as like where Alonzo is now, I think, where it's like, yeah, everybody wants that guy on their team because he makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
It might take him a while to get to that level of shooting, though. So, but I really like Anthony Black. Again, point of attack defense at 6'7", 195. Like, he's a good defender, really committed to it, which is a running theme with all these 3 Arkansas guys, Nick Smith, Anthony Black, and Jordan Walsh. Like, that defense is going to be pretty monstrous because all 3 guys really want to get after it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, are there any draft questions you have or anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I want to ask you specifically too, because I want to take it back for the Pistons for a second, because we're going to have more time to spend on prospects. I want to ask you, because you kind of hinted at it already with your first prospect, but what are some things, because you had to watch the Pistons all last season, you see things, especially in a player that you're looking for that the Pistons need. When you're looking at a prospect, or at least this upcoming draft, what kind of player are you looking for the Pistons? Like, what is their best fit for a prospect? Like, whether it's height, a position, whatever it is, and you can name a player as well. And maybe it is the first player you named, but who's the best, I guess, fit in terms of the prospect you're looking for the Pistons?
Do you want a name or just like a position?
I guess overall, like, you don't have to give me a name, but what are you looking for? Positional, wise? What are you looking for? Tangible,
maybe you could say overall, and then maybe you can give an example if you like.
Athletic wing. That'd be my first spot, because I don't think Ivy is tall enough or committed enough to be that like person that can handle threes. We don't want Cade doing that because of the offensive load, even though he can do it. We're not like it. Saddiq will see this upcoming, I almost said semester, so I'm getting stuck in my teaching this upcoming season. We'll see, because he did slim down, so maybe that might be part of it. Is like they want him to focus more on wing defense and being more quick laterally and stuff. But a lot of people also have said stretch 4, which makes a lot of sense too with how he rebounded the ball last season. But even then, he's not like this above average athlete. And then obviously there's Beef Stew and Duran. I think that's going to be the investment for at least 2 more seasons to see like how those two work and how their skills develop along that path. So athletic wing would be there. I think at the top of that list is Tariq Whitehead, who's going to Duke, 6'6", 190. Again, another guy that can really get after it after defense. Another Montverde alumni there. He's got a good mid-range pull-up game. Still working on the 3 ball a lot. But, I mean, he's everything that Saddiq is not. And that's no knock on Saddiq, but he's a creator. He's got that mid-range pull-up. He can play make some. And again, this is somebody that can guard threes and holds up pretty well, pretty strong, committed to being able to handle quicker people and has strength as well to go along with it. So I think that would be like the ideal and where it's at right now.
Yeah, maybe someone who's not like maybe someone that's like someone that can like fill in the blanks, and maybe someone that would complement Saddiq on the court.
Yeah, I mean, we need somebody like Chris Middleton. I think the Pistons need somebody like Chris Middleton, because again, Cade's Giannis. We don't want somebody that's. I mean, I was going to say Kyrie Irving, but I mean, everybody's got negative opinion on him in that regard. The other one that we've used around DBB is CP3 and Devin Booker. Like we need, Cade can be either of those guys. We just need the other one in that to be able to play off of him. So
we need a Mikal Bridges.
Right. The good thing you mentioned that. So in the article I'm working on right now, I have what's called Mikal Watch, because that's shout out to Scott from DBB. He and I have said that a lot. We need Mikal Bridges. How can we get Mikal Bridges to Detroit? Well, there's a bunch of guys in this that we're putting on Mikal Watch. So
I love that.
Yeah, and it's this idea of a wing guy that has super good length, that also has some upside on offense, who's not going to be just like the 5th guy kind of standing in a corner, who's going to be solid, but is definitely going to be a big difference maker on defense, or at least you hope so. Then there are a couple guys in this. I don't know if you want to start just rambling off names or what.
Well, I want to go off your point you made real quick, and then you can get into it, because I love what you said, because that's the one thing I talked about, because people all year crapped on Jeremy Grant, which was undeservedly so, because of what he brought, not even offensively, defensively. Like, with Jeremy Grant, you could throw him on a Kevin Durant or a Giannis Antetokounmpo. Although those guys are impossible to stop, at least you can help slow them down with his length. So I'm glad you brought that up, because the loss of Jeremy, I think that the Pistons desperately need a guy like Jeremy. I mean, maybe you don't like the mindset of Jeremy and what he's built like, but and you get rid of him, you don't want to pay him. But to draft a rookie like Jeremy Grant, every Pistons fan would love that. So I'm glad that you said an athletic wing with length, because that's the exact same thing we've been saying on this show as well. So I'm glad you brought it up. And then now you can name some more prospects, because I love what you're doing.
Well, I think Jordan Walsh is maybe at the top of Mikal Watch. He's going to be another guy out of Arkansas. He's listed at 6'7", 200 pounds, but this dude is lanky. Like when you see him, it's go gadget arms, man. And he's another guy that really, really loves playing defense and loves smothering like the opposition, knows how to use that length, knows how to play in passing lanes. Like you see him poke out the ball so much just because guys aren't ready for how long his arms are. Can move laterally as well. Like he could really be anywhere from 2 to a 4, depending on how a team wants to develop him, if they want to bulk up a little more, just like Mikal Bridges, right? I think he's probably tops on that list. The Thompson twins, depending on how you look at them, could be in that one. I think Asar more than Amin, because Amin has point guard handle and point guard vision for sure. He just played Mega Nikola Durasic, who's another guy in this top 20, and he dished out a bunch of assists and really did look like a point guard, whereas Asar is still working on kind of finding his role. But the thing you cannot knock both of these guys on is defense. Like, again, they are super committed, very explosive, very athletic, and they really will get up in your face and just frustrate you to where you can't do anything, because they can run with point guards. They can handle power forwards, maybe not so much centers, but another guy that I think could be on Mikal Watch. And with that athleticism, I mean, that's why everybody's so high on them, is because you can utilize that athleticism in a bunch of different ways but their jump shot is going to be even further behind than where Mikal Bridges was coming into the league. That's going to be the big thing there. Final one, I think, is Chris Livingston out of Kentucky. They list him at 6'6", 220 pounds. I always designate, me and Scott over at DBB, shout out Scott again, have designated this the Cal clamps, meaning the Calipari clamps. Every year at Kentucky, there's always a guy, right, that everybody's like, I don't know, he didn't shoot the three well. I don't know, he looked like a role player. I don't know. He just kind of was standing around the corner. And yet every year, from Eric Bledsoe to Ty Washington this past year, it happens every year because Cal gets you in a system where you have to play a role. He's going to prepare you for the NBA, and it's going to work. Livingston, like when they just did a tour in the Bahamas over the summer, they played like 4 or 5 teams, and Livingston and Cason Wallace were the two like really high profile freshmen. Wallace worked his way in the starting lineup. He's another guy I really like. But Livingston still's coming off the bench, so he might end up in like this Devin Booker type role of coming off the bench, standing in the corner, mainly being a shooter, definitely being a defender as well. Another guy that's strong, long, and really Cal always gets them right on defense. So I don't have any fears there as well. He'd be another guy. And he's kind of under the radar right now because all these other guys are vaulting him. And again, he might be stuck on the bench. He might be that Kentucky guy like Emmanuel Quickley or Devin Booker, like I said before, that kind of gets buried, not by his own account, but just because Kentucky's trying to win a championship, man. Yeah,
it's still crazy to me that Devin Booker was so good. It came off the bench. It just boggles
that team
my
was
mind.
stacked, man.
Yeah, man. Unreal talent. Unreal. But I mean, it just shows how crazy it is. And I do want to, real quick before I want to talk a little bit about the Amani Bates story before we end the podcast. But, before we get there, I want to ask, as a guy that goes and dives in and watches a lot of these, prospects and goes and does a lot of evaluations, what was your evaluation on Cade Cunningham? And before the Pistons came into the equation, was he someone that you were eyeing on for the Pistons or hoping that they could get? And what was your honest, unbiased evaluation of him as a prospect?
Devin Booker on offense, Jason Tatum on defense. That was my evaluation of him because he did a lot on that defense for Oklahoma State. And then on offense, he was a creator, but he wasn't like a point guard first. He was more of a scorer that is going to use that as leverage to get his teammates easy shots, which is why Oklahoma State was able to get to the tournament, because he remembered, I have to score first, and that's going to set up everybody else like Devin Booker does.
Man, you just spoke directly to me there. That was so good. That was so
and he
good.
was the one guy too that like where you can't really give a 1-to-1 comparison because of how many different things he can do, which again, going back to Victor Wembanyama, you can't really give a comparison on these guys that are considered consensus number 1 for a long time because they normally can do so much. Then you just don't see it that often that you can't find a comp for them.
Yeah. Jeff, what I know from me, I was like, we'll be good with whoever we get. But in the back of my head, I was like, gosh, please, I want Cade Cunningham so bad. I'm not sure what your thoughts were leading up to it because, obviously our friendship, we've had the luxury of just having Cade Cunningham in our lives the entire time. But what were your thoughts leading up to that draft and leading up to that lottery?
I'll never forget it. I just started at Woodward. I was there for a couple months already. And when this narrative came around with the Jalen Green versus Cade Cunningham comparisons, there were some people that still were on the Jalen Green train. But for me, I just wanted the most complete player. Like, this is a position the Pistons are in. They have to, this is supposed to be the new era of Pistons basketball. Whoever you take as your franchise player, for me, not even just what Cade does on the court, but it was off the court for me as well. Like his leadership, everything he brings, his intangibles, like what he does on the basketball court, watching a lot of Oklahoma State, like you could tell he's special. Like you said, he was set his teammates up, score later, like he could get to his spots at will, but off the court, like that's a franchise player. And when we got him, when the pick was announced, it was confirmed before, man, I was enlightened because I knew we were getting a franchise player. Not saying Jalen Green isn't, but in terms of what he can do, how he can, putting a guy in that position at that age for a franchise that needs to come out of from an Andre Drummond, Blake Griffin era, like you need a guy like Cade. You really do. So I was ecstatic, man. I had the best time covering that after the draft because everybody was, on the same page. It's kind of like this following year with Jaden Ivy. Like it's great covering a draft when everybody's on the same page and it goes the way you expected and you don't mess up. This isn't Luke Kennard going, when you saw it was clearly Donovan Mitchell. This is Cade, Jaden Ivy. And I want to ask you before, if we have a couple of minutes, your evaluation on Jaden Ivy too, because that was one topic that me and Sean would have these arguments with people all the time about, like, this prospect, Keegan Murray, Jaden Ivy, all these guys. For you, what was the thing that stood out to you about Jaden Ivy, and then coming closer to the draft, like him in a Pistons uniform? What'd you think of it in terms of fit?
I don't like it. I'm somebody that is not high on Jaden Ivy. I don't want to like rain on your parade where you're like, everybody's.
It's okay, Steve. We all reserve the right to be wrong.
I think he'll be a fine player. I'm not going to say he's a. I'm not going to say he's a bust.
Right.
He'll
just your evaluation.
Number one, but start positively. He'll get to the free throw line. I think he'll get to the free throw than Jeremy Granted, to be quite honest. And they'll run him on. I hope they run him on the same actions that they ran Grant on, with like these curls and pin downs, because Jaden Ivey is really good off the ball. I don't think that gets talked about enough, and that's how he generated a lot of his offense. Shooting's going to take a while. We talked about it ad nauseum on Woodward Pistons a lot, where he shot 30% from three once the calendar turned to 2022 and competition ranked up. It's not great. He struggled at times to say over 70% from the free throw line. Also not a good indicator. The mid-range is the definite one. Like, he doesn't have a mid-range yet. And yes, again, I understand. Again, I'm a Michigan alum, so I understand Big Ten basketball and the clog to paint and whatever. But the two bigs didn't always play together all the time. They kind of, swapped Travion Williams and Zach Edey in and out. So it wasn't super clogged. Ivy also played with three 40% and above three-point shooters at all times, with Hunter Thompson and Sasha Stefanovic in there. So he had like quite a bit of spacing, more than I think people think. And with all that, he took only 27 shots in the mid-range. That's going to be something that is going to take a while to perfect. Like we talked about in the last Woodward Pistons, I think, like, if you go look up rookie year Victor Oladipo, I don't want to look up his stats again. I think it's something like that, 12 points, 11 points. Again, he'll get to the free throw line, I think, a lot. But that mid-range is tough. And then on defense, I think, is where he has the most to work on. And I've put together clips. I'll try and put together a DBB article before the season, just because little things like sliding your feet, not staying on your heels. If you just pull up the Wisconsin film and both of those, Johnny Davis in the first game cooked him, put him on his hip, put him in really bad spots, got him in foul trouble. He got frustrated in that game. The second game, Chucky Hepburn just shot the lights out over him and shot the game winner right in his face. Because again, he's on his heels. He's not in a defensive stance. That cost them the game. And you see him at the end, put his head down and realize, like, I messed up. Those are going to be little things. Again, that's why I question the fit, because Cade needs a spacer and a point of attack defender. Not saying Ivy can't do it. I think it's just going to take longer.
I think,
fair.
It's definitely going to take longer. And I think, to your point, I think people love like the potential of it and automatically like anoint them to be like what we hope they can be. And I think just what you're touching on is just the reality of, this isn't the perfect fit. Like if we're talking about, like, if the Pistons were to draft off of fit, they probably would have went with Benedict Mathurin, or if available, they probably would have went with Keegan Murray, if just solely off of fit, if we're being honest. However, I think what they saw was the fact that a guy like Cade Cunningham is a guy that you can generally not have the guy that might be the perfect fit, but the ceiling of what they can be is perhaps the highest because of Ivy's athleticism. Ivy's, it's not the best jump shot, but it's not like the worst base to start off of either, I would say. And I think what the difference is between, because he's always compared to Russell Westbrook, right? And I think
which is an unfair comparison. I think it's an unfair comparison.
It's an unfair comparison too, because I think, for me, when I look at the similarities, I definitely see the similarities in the game-changing speed on the court. I think I see, like, in the athleticism, their ability to like create plays for others. But I think the difference is that Jaden Ivy is the son of a coach. Jaden Ivy, is a rat in the gym. He's a guy that goes really hard, but also he's a guy that's always working to, grow his game and to improve as a player. Whereas I think Russ is a guy who I'm going to go out and I'm going to cook the way that I cook. and I'm going to play the way that I play, and I'm going to be who I am. And I think that we've seen his unrelenting, ability to, he doesn't want to change. He doesn't want to be anyone other than himself. I think it's ultimately been his downfall. But I think for a guy like Jaden Ivy, I think he wants to put in the work and to make that work and to make that fit be a reality, because I think he sees the upside of that too. So
if I can shift gears for a minute, though, like if you talk about fit and like how you would find somebody in that other guard spot who would fit next to Cade, I mean, Scoot Henderson's the other guy that like, to me, honestly, the more I've delved into him, the more I understand, like, oh, like I know we have Ivy, but Scoot is another guy like you should not pass up and does have these qualities that complement Cade, and you just take the talent. And like you said with Cade, we'll just figure it out, right? You figure it out in that regard. I can give you some numbers on Scoot. 6'2", 195. Obviously, the size is like might be a thing for some people. To me, it does not matter. Because number one, this is a kid that was 17 years old in the G League and posted these numbers I'm about to tell you. He had a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, 88 assists to 44 turnovers. This is in 21 games. He shot 48.6% on his pull-up jumpers inside of the arc, which is 36 of 74. He only took 6 pull-up threes, but he was 3 of 6 on those. So at least he hit them at a good rate. And then his ability to finish at the rim was 64% on shots within 5 feet of the basket. He was 44 of 74 on those shots. Has super athleticism. He's been compared to D Rose, John Wall. Has some work to do on the defensive end, like Ivy. But again, he has another year to hone that in the G League. Yeah, he's got the wingspan. And I honestly think he's a better athlete than Ivy. Ivy's more straight line, whereas Scoot has shown the ability to operate and pick and roll. That 2-to-1 assist at 17, 18 years old when you should be in high school. And that pull-up jumper, 48.6, like that is not seen in anybody. Like that is super advanced. That's something that like 10-year vets wish they had, right? That's something that like saddiq wishes he had right now. That's something that Cade is working on right now. Like that is rarefied air. That'd be somebody that, again, it looks like a perfect fit next to Cade that can draw attention away, create easier shots for him, and has that athleticism to drop the hammer to really pull people into the rim.
I will push back in the sense, though, that like the guy hasn't even played a damn game yet. You know what I'm saying? Like I am excited about Ivy in like overall, like, I definitely understand that, Scoot Henderson is definitely a heck of a prospect. And like, even just watching Customer right now, definitely like what I see. But I think, I think with Ivy, I think there's a lot to like of, I don't think, like I said, like, I don't think the fit is seamless day one, but I also don't think it's a bad fit day one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm just getting out in front. Like by the time the draft rolls around, that they shouldn't say, "Oh, we have Ivy, don't take a guard." Just like you shouldn't say, "Oh, we have Duran, don't take a center." If there's somebody there that is, like this rare that you don't see this in a 17, 18-year-old kid, like you take them and figure it out.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a great point. And I think you're making the good point of saying don't restrict yourself at that point just because you have a player. I think it's just like you see the best teams go out and like, well, we'll figure it out, quite frankly, and like, who knows, like, right. Like the Pistons have already shown that this year with Killian, Ivy and Cade, that they want to figure out like a 3-guard lineup. So who knows, maybe they'd want to do a Henderson, Ivy, Cade lineup. They, you never know. The Pistons can always, that's the luxury of of doing drafts and having this type of general manager and coach. They can be pretty creative with this stuff. So I think they're in that luxury. But I do want to touch real quick before we end the podcast on Emoni Bates. This is a guy that, Sports Illustrated, whenever they don a prospect, that generally brings weight because they did it one time with this one kid they called the Chosen One. And he, I think his name was LeBron James. I think he had an okay career, over in Canada or something. Not entirely sure, but Cleveland. It's practically Canada. But Emoni Bates.
Don't diss Canada like that. Come on now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They don't deserve to be compared to Ohio. But anyway, Emoni Bates was arrested today on 2 felony gun charges. And unfortunately, his college career and his playing career in general right now is looking a little bit more in doubt. I don't really want to go into you know, I don't really want to go into the character stuff. I don't really want to go into like any of that because I just for one hope, just pray that Amani's okay, that he gets help, and that and that he can turn this around at some point. But
Yeah.
I think this is just an important conversation of, a lot of being a great prospect isn't just about what he brings on the court. It's about, like, we talk about Cade Cunningham being the number one pick as a player. He was the number one pick as a person too, right? But at the same time, just how much pressure these guys face. I mean, Steve, we were just talking about how much scrutiny Amani Bates has faced over the years. How unfair is that to a guy like him? And quite frankly, like, what should this teach us about the recruiting process and about putting these types of titles on these young of guys?
Yeah, so when we were talking beforehand, I was telling you guys, like, I don't like to really watch film until the guys are entering college because of this idea. I mean, and if you remember, Russell Westbrook kind of unloaded on the media a couple of years ago when he was on Washington, saying, like, you guys put narratives on guys and, like, you don't even know them, right? And it's like magnified even more for, what was Amani, like 16 years old or whatever?
Yeah.
And then put him on the cover. It's impossible. It's hard for a 30-year-old man to be able to handle that kind of a pressure. And then all of the latchers on, like, there's going to be latchers on no matter what, right? And if you don't have that circle, that small circle around you too, of people that say, look, this person's not like about you, this person's not looking out for you. Or two, when your ego gets too big, they're like, you're an idiot. I remember when, like, you were like drunk at Denny's or something like that, that put you in check like that. Not to say that Amani doesn't have those in his life, but it just seems like, bad decision after bad decision. And hopefully this can be a wake-up call. I also think, like, anybody that is going to put that label of him being a bad kid or like a thug or whatever, like, get out of here. Go watch that documentary ESPN did, The Trial of Allen Iverson. Like, let's not repeat that again. This is a kid. He made a mistake. Let him learn from it. Move on. Don't put a label on him. If I had my life publicized when I was 19 years old, like, I would probably look worse than Amani.
And think about it too. In today's world of social media and today's world of covering and just media in general, like, things get out so quickly, and not just that, they get across nationally very quickly. So in the world Amani's in, it's sad. I mean, I'm not obviously going to go into the situation because we need more facts to come out. I want to speak on it, but just from my opinion about Amani, I mean, from a young age to be crowned the next Kevin Durant, like, not only does that put a lot of pressure on anybody, that's why I hate giving guys, handing the next whoever. Like, remember when OJ Mayo was supposed to be the next MJ or the next, and he had actually a decent career, but still he never lived up to those expectations. It's just unfair to say guys are going to be X, Y or Z, the next Kobe, whoever it is. Like, for Amani, it was never fair to put those expectations on him, and it's sad to say the least. Not even just this situation. Going back to Memphis, like, I remember watching him at Memphis and seeing the relationship between him and Penny Hardaway, and seeing what Penny was able to do with guys like Jalen Duren. It's just, there's clearly a character issue. And again, is that Amani? Is that his circle that he's grew up with? Like, is it his ego? I don't know what it is. I don't know the guy personally, but it's sad to see. I mean, he's got tremendous talent, and whatever it is, character-wise, his mindset, whatever it is, I think Steve absolutely hit it on the head. Like, it's about the circle he has. Like, with LeBron, guys would call him out because those are guys you grew up with. Like, with Amani, I don't know his circle. I don't know if it's guys he grew up with, but they're not looking out for his best interests. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one last thing before we do end the podcast, Adrian Wojnarowski just actually dropped an interesting clarification on the reporting that was done today by Shams. Saying, while lowering the 19 and over draft age will be a significant part of the NBPA collective bargaining discussions, sources tell ESPN nothing is advanced on elimination of the one and done rule. So it does right now look like it is something that will be discussed. But as of right now, it looks like it's not something that's entirely a locked deal. So we will be definitely evaluating that and looking closer and closer as things go on. But in addition, we will definitely be talking more and more draft as the season goes on. And when that is, Steve will definitely be coming back. Steve, thanks so much for coming on the pod, man, and filling in and being our third guy this week. But dude, thanks for talking draft with us, man. Dude, you know, like you say, dude, it's never too early to talk about the draft, even if it's not even training camp yet. And so, like, I just appreciate you. And man, seriously, we're definitely going to be having you on more and more throughout the year to talk about prospects.
You're the
Yeah,
man,
man, happy
Steve.
to be here. I feel like I just barely scratched the surface, so I'm happy to come on. And the fun part about it too is there's a bunch of guys that I haven't even broken out yet. Like
Yeah, dude.
last year, like nobody really talked about Bryce McGowan's a bunch, and then he broke out. I mean, there's always risers that just come out of nowhere. Even Johnny Davis, like I think it was either Mavs draft or draft dummies, one of those guys. He was the only guy I heard like say, maybe this guy will get first round consideration, and then bam, he's National Player of the Year. So
yeah,
I mean, those guys that pop up.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So be sure you bookmark this episode so that a year from now, when these guys are, in the NBA and we're talking about what they're going to be doing in the upcoming years, you can remember that Steve is the one that told you about it first. But also be sure that you remember, because some of these guys that we're talking about, we could be talking about as wanting to be Pistons in the future. And that's what it's all about here, man, because I'm From Half Court. We are wanting to predict and talk all things basketball, whether it's in the present, whether it's in the past, but also even if it's in the future. So be sure that you're subscribed so you see what's coming out on this channel in the future and in the days to come. But also be sure you're following Steve on Twitter at Burke Worldwide, and then also my guy Jeff Iafrady and everything he's doing on the Morning Woodward Show. But also, if you're feeling charitable, be sure to follow your boy at Sean Halfcourt as well. But Jeff also, he's the handsome one, so that's the one you really want to follow. But with that, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. See you guys.